Give me one. Yeah. How's everybody feeling? Good. Woo! Good to see my friends and family out here. Thank you so much, Dr. Zoe. All right. Well, welcome. Good evening. My name is Marley Ralph, and I can't wait to graduate.
Yeah, girl. Good. Mouse.
Perfect. All right. So, if you know this mantra, then please sing along. Ya Devi Shakti Rupena Samsita Namasasye 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 Namo Nama. If you have absolutely no idea what we just said, we said to that Devi, who in all beings is abiding in the form of power, salutations to her, salutations to her, salutations to her, salutations again and again. And if that still didn't make sense, then maybe you'll recognize this quote. This is a man's world, but it would be nothing without a woman or a girl. Who knows this? Thank you. Friends, my grandmother gave me this book when I went off to college. It's called Bad Girls Throughout History. It is 100 women who really made a change. And sure. 100 women who made a change throughout history. When she gave me this book, it was almost like a rite of passage for me because I was like, wow, this is how my grandmother sees me, or this is how she wants me to live my life. And then the dawning feeling came over me that why is it that this was the first book that has ever been given to me about women's history? Why is it that I went through so long? I just graduated high school and I didn't know half of the women that were inside of this book. And then on top of that, the women that were in this book only got one paragraph, a little cartoon picture and a paragraph. And I said, no, there has to be more. So the women that are in this book are bad girls. And the way I define bad girls are a woman who speaks her mind, challenges societal expectations, and stands up for what she believes is right. A woman whose refusal to remain silent or compliant is often mischaracterized as rebellion or disrespect. And one who disrupts systems of injustice through confidence, self-definition, and power. I'm going to pass this around if anybody wants to look at the pretty pictures. And so I dedicate my thesis to the baddest girls that I know, starting with my grandmother who gave me this book. She is the one that taught me how to be audacious. My mother next to her, she taught me how to love. My cousin, Ivy Coco, who's here today, she taught me what real kindness and loyalty is. My auntie Cheryl taught me how to dream big, and when you dream bigger than that. My auntie Tracy, she taught me how to laugh and enjoy life. My granddie, she gave me my strength and my stature. And all the way at the end is my best friend, Stony. She was the epitome of YOLO, you only live once. Unfortunately, my granddie passed away in 2018, and my best friend Stony passed away in 2020 of a drug overdose. So this thesis is really in the light and spirit of them. So just a little overview of what we'll be going over today. We'll first get into the methodology and literature review. We'll get into the contradiction, the answer that I'm grasping with here. Yogic philosophy, which is the basis of really my thesis. the goddess within, and then also looking at why this matters and where do we go from here. My methodology, I did not do an IRB study. Instead, I focused on humanistic research. I used analysis of text, I use archival research, oral histories, anecdotal data, and secondary empirical data as well. And then the second part of this thesis, the last maybe 30 pages, is a program that I designed. It's an 8-week program called More Than Enough for Young Women of Color, specifically at predominantly white institutions. My literature review, I've been using yogic philosophical foundations that go from the Vedas, the Upanishads, and then the Devi Mahatmya is where most of my study is found. Historical comparative analysis, examining the lives of Kasturba Gandhi and Coretta Scott King and so many other women who use this Shakti power and energy to sustain themselves and their movements. And then, of course, I use Black feminist thought just for an added layer, using Kimberly Crenshaw's method of intersectionality and other authors like Audre Lorde, Bell Hooks, and Alice Walker, just for this interpretive lens. So my thesis aims to shine a light on the women who embody this Shakti energy, yet whose voices go unheard. The contradiction that I've been grasping with is that Shakti, in theory, is celebrated as the animated force that's found within everything. Every single thing that we see today, from the plants to the people to the trees to the microorganisms, have this Shakti energy. There's nothing that can be transformed or conspired without Shakti. It's derived from the Sanskrit word shak, meaning to be able to do or to act, and it is the divine, essential, and foundational force within all beings. While in practice, women have been systemically excluded from the social and political systems that depend on this very same power. Their labor, their ideas help shape the world, yet their contributions have been ignored or hidden by patriarchal norms. And yogic philosophy within itself actually emerged from these systems. The Vedas, which is the foundational text of yoga, it established caste. The caste system is the creation of the four varnas, the Brahmins, the Kshatriyas, the Vaishyas, and the Shudras, and then later on, the Dalits or the untouchables. And this ideology formed at the same time that yogic ideology was being formed within the Vedas. It also encouraged patriarchal norms. The Vedas were spoken down from man to boy, and most of the time it was Brahmin men to Brahmin boys. And so it's an interesting thing because yogic philosophy within itself, as it came out of these types of texts and this type of environment, yoga itself still has such a huge power to transform, to empower. And I think that something I started thinking about was that's what power is. Power can either be used to oppress or to liberate. It doesn't matter which one it is. And so the Devi Mahatmya, almost 2,000 years later, is really the first text that we see that centralizes divine femininity. It follows the story of the goddess Durga, who came together from all of the gods, including Brahma, the god of creation, Shiva, the god of transformation, and Vishnu, the protector of the universe. They created Durga because they couldn't do it themselves. And they gave her these weapons that symbolize how to get over the ego, how to obtain social justice, and how to just be better. Durga, hold on. Let me get my. Okay. So Durga has all of these weapons that all of the gods came together to give to her. We see here she has the trident that represents the three gunas, sattva, rajas, and tamas. Sattva being the energy that is balanced, it's Goldilocks. Rajas being the high energy, Tamas being the low energy. And so this trident represents all three of those coming together in the face of the ego. The chakra symbolizes wisdom and the power of the divine mind to protect yourself from evil. The sword symbolizes discrimination and the power to cut through illusion and ignorance. And then we go over here, this microphone. We go over here and we see that the lotus signifies purity, spiritual awakening, and detachment from worldly desires. And the mace represents strength, discipline, and power to overcome ignorance. The bow signifies focus, determination, and the ability to stay steady in purpose. So, all of these weapons are used to show what it is that you need to come in the face of oppression, in the face of evil, and in the face of really your own self, your own ego. I see these symbols so much in real women, some of the women that were inside of that book. And the two women that I chose to focus on within my thesis were Kasturba Gandhi and Coretta Scott King. Now, you might know exactly who their husbands are. Do we? We have an idea. Okay. But you might not know what they did to sustain the movement, to create the movement, and also to keep the legacy going. Kasturba Gandhi. In the 19th century, there was something called indentured servitude. Indentured servitude is when Africans and Indians, and really anybody that was darker complexion, was taken from their homeland and shipped off to European countries to work for pretty much nothing. It was just a fancy word of saying, you're my slave. And so Kasturba and Mahatma Gandhi, they went to South Africa around this time. And they noticed that Indians, who still to this day represent one of the highest populations within South Africa, they were subjugated to terrible living. They lived in slums. They lived in it was bad. That's all I could say, is that it was really bad what was happening. And so they created something called the Phoenix Settlement. And this is not Phoenix, Arizona, but Phoenix in Durban, South Africa. And it was an ashram. And this ashram was based off of yogic principles such as ahimsa, nonviolence, seva, selfless service, sarvodaya, well-being for all, satyagraha, truth-based resistance. She also protested laws invalidating Hindu marriage. She was arrested and jailed multiple times after protesting for discriminatory immigration laws. And she embodied tapas through disciplined endurance and sacrifice. And one of the things while she was in prison, she actually created an ashram within the prison. She would pray with the younger people who were there. She would make sure that the activists' voices were heard, even behind bars. And then this quote at the bottom, I love. She said, "Nonviolence cannot be preached, but it has to be practiced." Mahatma Gandhi himself said that he would not have known ahimsa and nonviolence if it wasn't for his wife, Kasturba Gandhi. And then about 10 years after India gained its independence, we started hearing about this young pastor in Montgomery, Alabama, named Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who actually was very inspired by this nonviolent movement. But the person that was by his side the entire time was Mrs. Coretta Scott King. Coretta said herself in her autobiography, "What most did not understand then was not only was I married to the man I love, but I was married to the movement that I loved." Just 3 weeks, I mean, imagine that. 3 weeks after the assassination of your husband, she led the Memphis Sanitation Workers March. She sustained the Poor People's Campaign, and she continued on to found the Martin Luther King Jr. Center for Nonviolent Social Change, ensuring the movement's principles would be endured. She expanded activism to also include apartheid, women's rights, LGBTQ plus rights, economic justice, and also global peace. And she is the reason why we all have a day off on MLK Day. She petitioned alongside Rosa Parks at that to make sure that MLK Day was something that was honored. And actually, unfortunately, it's something that this administration is currently wanting to get rid of. But we can thank Coretta Scott King for keeping legacy and the momentum going. And while I am trying to fit in 76 pages within 20 minutes, I can't go through each person. But these are also women who inspired me on my journey through spirituality. We see Rosa Parks is up here actually doing yoga. We have Angela Davis, Sarojini Naidu, Aruna Asaf Ali, who was the first mayor of Delhi. The first mayor of Delhi was a woman. Incredible. Tina Turner, who sustained herself through Buddhist practice, and Alice Coltrane, who is just my absolute favorite. She actually had an ashram here in Malibu. So, why does any of this matter at all? And I really had to think this question to myself a few times. Why does this matter? And what I landed on was because representation matters. Representation matters, especially in a world today where women's bodies are being degraded and taken advantage of, rights are being stripped away, voices are not being heard, and too many times do I hear a woman is too emotional to be a leader. This happens every single day, and that's why this matters. You have to be able to know and see what power is like before you are able to believe it within yourself. And so, if we don't know who these women are throughout history that hone in this Shakti energy, then how am I supposed to even go out into this world and know what to do or who to depend on? And so, that's why this matters. It also matters because instances are happening every single day in places like India, where this yogic knowledge and philosophy comes from in the first place. Trigger warning for anybody that might have experienced any kind of sexual violence in their lives. In India today, they are currently 101 on the Gender Inequality Index out of 193 countries. There are 31,000 rape cases per year, and the key word here is reported rape cases per year. And there are 83,000 plus reported assault cases per year. Now, when I first heard this data, I was like, oh my gosh, that's a lot. And then I had to take a step back and think to myself of how many billions of people are in India. And these numbers are actually pretty low. And they're low for a reason. They're low because these numbers are underreported because the perpetrators are men in power. They are their fathers. They are their people in their village. They are the people at the police office. They are the people that are working in Congress. So actually, it is more dangerous sometimes to speak up about the violence that's happening than to just not say anything at all. Compared to the US today, we're currently 45 on the Gender Inequality Index. And we're pretty, that's pretty good. That's better than 101. But you also have to look at the day and age that we have and the privilege that we have in the US. We have access to healthcare, we have access to education, we have opportunity. While it's not equal, we do have more of an access within the United States. And you also see there with that access, the reported rape cases are higher. We have 130,000 reported rape cases, and that's not a good thing. But they are being reported, that's about 1 in 3 women. 31.5% experience domestic violence. That's almost half of our population that's experiencing this type of violence. And so you have to add the layer of intersectionality. I use the basis of Kimberly Crenshaw. And intersectionality is just the understanding that when two intersections meet, you're getting the oppression from one and also simultaneously from the other. For instance, when we're talking about caste, caste is compounded discrimination faced by Dalit women whose social position is shaped simultaneously by both caste and gender. And then another one is women of color, more specifically, Black women. Black women in America navigate the intersection pressures of racialized and genderized discrimination, and these burdens often begin at a very early age. While adolescence is challenging for everyone, being a young Black woman in America comes with additional pressures that are often overshadowed or misunderstood. Between 2013 to 2019, we saw a 59% increase on suicide rates among Black female youth aged 15 to 24, and those numbers haven't changed or decreased since then. In fact, just this past Easter weekend, a young woman, a young Black woman, unalived herself right here in this building. She unfortunately was supposed to graduate. She was supposed to graduate this Saturday, and she is no longer with us to do so. While I can't use her name for the purpose of this thesis, I would love for all of us to take a moment of silence. Thank you. It hits home for me because this number could have easily included me as well. So this is me during my awkward stage. Mm. And behind this smile was a girl that was deeply depressed. At 12 years old is when I started having feelings of depression. I didn't really have language for it, but I started self-harming at 12 years old, cutting my wrist, using rubber bands to create welts around my wrists as well. At 14 years old, I had more of a language behind what this depression was. But it was also at 14 years old that I start going through hormonal changes and everything. And I started comparing myself so much to other women. You're not pretty enough, you're not skinny enough. And I developed a very unhealthy eating habits and started my bulimia journey at 14 years old. And at 16 years old, I started having passive suicidal thoughts. Those passive suicidal thoughts led me all the way up until undergrad, where I did see a psychologist right here, Student Psychological Services, and they actually said that I had clinical depression. And so they wanted me to go on medication, but I've come from a very holistic family. And so we decided not to do any medication. Instead, I used a neurotransmitter called GABA. And GABA was supposed to kind of level me out, but it had adverse effects where my anxiety was a little bit higher while I was on it. And I didn't feel good at all. So I stopped using that. And truly, in undergrad, right after that, it was probably a month after that, I tried GABA or I stopped using GABA. Did I find yoga? And I remember taking my first hot yoga class and looking inside of the mirror and seeing what I now have language for as the divine feminine. I looked in the mirror and I saw power, I saw strength, I saw self efficacy, I saw somebody who was beautiful. And that led me down the path of where we are today. So, through this experience in my incredible health science class by Dr. Lori Fazio, thank you so much. I created an 8-week program for young women of color called More Than Enough. It is an 8-week self efficacy program based on yoga asana and philosophy to help young women of color find Shakti. It includes yoga and mindfulness, which has found 70% of yoga interventions for youth show improvements in anxiety and depression. It'll be accessible and affirming, going right into the girls' schools, making sure that we have a program that is right there for them. They don't have to go too far. And it will, more importantly, bring girls together to create community and sisterhood. Because again, to believe in your own Shakti, you have to find others who believe in theirs too. So, in conclusion, we have gone through Shakti, the divine feminine, Coretta and Kasturba, and all the other incredible women throughout history who hold this power, and how to support the everyday goddess through a program called More Than Enough. Yoga, although shaped within systems of hierarchy and exclusion, also holds the potential to become a practice of healing, women empowerment, and collective liberation. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Aww. Thank you to all my beautiful friends and my students and my family that came out. And thank you to my incredible professors. That one first mantra was something that Dr. Chappell actually sang to us every single day. And so it's very full circle. So thank you, Dr. Chappell. Thank you.